There's a moment, right, before you say no to someone where your whole body reacts before your brain even catches up. Your chest gets tight, your voice goes up half an octave, and most of us, in that exact moment, cave. We say yes, even when every part of us is screaming no.
I did that 3 days ago. Someone asked me to cover their shift on a Sunday, my one day off in 2 weeks, and I heard myself say, yeah, sure, no problem, before I'd even finished processing the question.
And that's what we're talking about today. Not the grammar of saying no, the actual physical, in-your-body difficulty of it, and a way through it that doesn't turn you into someone people don't like.
Because that's the fear, right? That if you say no enough times, people stop asking, and then people stop liking you.
That fear is the whole episode. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Real English Podcast, the place where you learn real English from real conversation, not from a textbook. I'm Olivia.
And I'm David. And Olivia, before we even start, I need to say, you look unusually pleased with yourself today.
Okay, fine. Yes, I said no to something yesterday, and it went well. I'm riding the high.
What did you say no to?
My sister asked me to help her repaint her entire apartment this weekend. The whole apartment, David. 4 rooms.
And what did you used to do in that situation?
I would have shown up Saturday morning with a paint roller and a fake smile, and I would have been furious by lunchtime and not said a word about it.
That's so specifically you. It hurts a little.
I know, but this time I actually said, I can't this weekend, but I'd love to help you pick colors. And she said, okay, that's it. The world didn't end.
See, this is why I'm glad we're doing this episode, because I am the opposite problem. I say no so bluntly that people think I'm annoyed with them, when really I just don't know how to soften it.
Which is honestly the more interesting half of this conversation, because most people think there are only 2 options: say yes and resent it, or say no and sound cold. And today we're going to talk about why that isn't actually true, and where that feeling even comes from in the first place.
But before we get into any of that, how are you actually doing? It's been a minute since we recorded.
Honestly, good. Tired, but good. I finally sorted through that box of cables that's been sitting in my hallway since the move.
The infamous box.
The infamous box. Turned out to be mostly chargers for phones I don't even own anymore. Very anticlimactic after a month of stepping over it.
A whole month of tension for a box of dead cables.
A whole month. And honestly, that's not a bad way into today's topic now that I think about it. Sometimes the thing we're avoiding is so much smaller than the fear we've built around it.
That's a genuinely good connection, and we haven't even started yet.
I have my moments. All right, let's actually get into it, because I think a lot of people listening already know exactly what their version of that box is.
Because it's not really about the words, is it? It's about something underneath the words.
Exactly. And that's where we're going to start. So here's what today actually is. This isn't a list of 5 polite ways to say no. We're going to get into why saying no feels dangerous to so many of us, even in situations with 0 real risk. Then we're going to walk through an actual method, a real one, from a Harvard negotiator that changes the shape of the sentence entirely. And somewhere in the middle, David is going to tell a story that makes me wince a little. So stay for that.
It's the paint roller's evil twin. Buckle up.
One small thing before we get into it. If you've been enjoying these episodes, hitting subscribe genuinely helps more people find the show, and it takes about 2 seconds. We read the comments too, so if something in this episode hits close to home, tell us. We mean that.
All right, let's talk about why no feels like the scariest 2-letter word in English.
So here's something I found while I was preparing for this that genuinely stopped me. There's a concept in psychology called the fawn response.
Fawn, like a baby deer?
Same spelling, different idea entirely. It comes from trauma research. A therapist named Pete Walker coined the term. The basic idea is this. When people talk about stress responses, most of us know fight, flight, or freeze. Fawn is the 4th one. It's when a person's nervous system decides the safest way to survive a threat isn't to fight it or run from it. It's to please it.
Please the threat?
Please the threat. Agree with it. Make yourself useful to it. Become impossible to be angry at.
Okay, that's a lot heavier than I expected for a podcast about being polite.
It is, but stay with me because here's the part that matters for basically everyone listening, whether or not you'd call your own life traumatic. You don't need a dramatic backstory to have a little bit of fawn wired into you. A lot of us grew up in homes where disagreement felt risky. Maybe a parent got quiet and cold when you pushed back. Maybe the easiest kid in the family got the most love. Maybe you just learned somewhere very early that being agreeable kept things calm.
And that sticks.
It sticks so well that as an adult, saying no to a totally reasonable request, like your coworker asking you to switch a meeting time, can trigger the same physical alarm bells as something actually dangerous. Your body doesn't always know the difference between this might upset someone and this might hurt me.
That explains something I've genuinely never understood about myself. I can say no to strangers with zero problem. Waiter asks if I want dessert. No, thank you. Done. But my mother asks me to come to a family dinner I don't have time for, and I feel like I'm being interrogated by the police.
Because with your mother, the stakes feel different. There's history there. There's a version of you that learned a long time ago what happens when you disappoint her.
Yeah, that tracks more than I'd like it to.
And this is the thing I want people to sit with for a second. If you've spent your whole life thinking, I'm just bad at boundaries, or I'm too nice for my own good, or maybe your body learned a survival strategy that made total sense once, and it just hasn't gotten the memo that the danger is gone.
That's a kinder way to think about it than you're a pushover.
Much kinder, and more accurate.
So if that's the why, what happens when people finally do try to say no? Because I feel like most of us swing way too hard in one direction.
This is exactly where I want to go next, because there's a name for this too, and once you hear it, you'll never unsee it in your own life.
Okay, go on, name it.
There's a negotiation expert named William Ury. He co-founded the Harvard program on negotiation, and he wrote a book called The Power of a Positive No. And in it, he describes what he calls the 3 A's. When we're asked for something we don't want to give, we tend to fall into one of 3 traps: accommodate, attack, or avoid.
Break those down for me.
Accommodate is what I did with my sister for years. Say yes, mean no, seethe quietly. Attack is the opposite, saying no so sharply that it lands like a punch, even if you didn't mean it that way.
That one's me.
I was going to say. And avoid is the third one, where you just disappear. You don't answer the text, you forget to reply to the email, you dodge the conversation entirely because saying anything, yes or no, feels too hard.
I've done all 3 in the same week before, genuinely.
Most people have. And Yuri's point is that all 3 of these come from the same place, a belief that no and yes are opposites, that you either protect the relationship or your own needs, and you have to pick one.
Which, when you say it out loud, sounds like a false choice.
It is a false choice, and that's the whole thesis of the book. He says the goal isn't to choose between the relationship and your needs. It's to find a version of no that honors both at the same time. He calls it a positive no.
All right, I want to hear how that actually works, but before we get there, I have to tell you about the time I chose attack and it did not go well.
Oh, I have been waiting for this.
So this was maybe 4 years ago. I had a friend, we'll call him Jay, who used to ask me to help him move, constantly, like an unreasonable amount, 3 times in 1 year.
3 apartments in 1 year?
3 apartments in 1 year, and every time I'd say yes because saying no felt rude. By the 3rd time, I was so quietly furious that when he texted me asking again, I just snapped. I texted back something like, I'm not doing this again. I'm not your free moving company. Find someone else.
Oh, David.
I know. And here's the thing. The request itself wasn't even unreasonable that one time. He genuinely needed help. But 3 years of silent yeses had built up so much resentment in me that when I finally said no, it came out as an attack instead of a boundary.
That's such an important distinction. The no wasn't the problem. The years of accommodating before it were the problem.
Exactly. And the friendship never really recovered. Not because I said no, because of how the no arrived, like a bomb going off instead of a door quietly closing.
Can I say something that might sound harsh?
Please.
I don't think you were actually angry at him in that moment.
Go on.
I think you were angry at yourself for all the times you said yes when you didn't want to, and he just happened to be standing there when it finally came out.
Yeah, honestly, yeah, that's exactly what it was.
That happens to almost everyone who leans toward accommodating. The resentment doesn't disappear just because you didn't say anything. It just waits, and it comes out eventually, usually at the worst possible moment, aimed at whoever's closest.
Which is a genuinely uncomfortable thing to realize about yourself.
It is, and I think this is worth sitting in for a second because it's not really a tip, it's just true.
Can I say something? I don't think I've said this out loud before, not even to myself, really.
Go ahead.
I think part of why I struggle with no is that I'm scared that if I stop being the guy who always says yes, people will realize I'm not actually that interesting or useful otherwise. Like being helpful is the whole personality. Take that away and what's left?
That's a real thing to say.
It's embarrassing to admit.
It's not embarrassing, it's honest. And I think a lot of people listening right now just felt that in their chest, even if they'd never have put it into words themselves.
You think so?
I do, because I think that fear is underneath a lot of accommodating. It's not really, I don't want to upset them. It's, if I stop giving, will they still want me around? That's a much scarier question than, should I help my sister paint this weekend?
Yeah, it's not really about the paint at all, is it?
It rarely is.
Okay, that got heavier than I meant it to, but I'm glad I said it.
Me too. And here's what I'd say back to you and to anyone listening who feels that same fear. The people who only stay close to you because you're useful were never actually attached to you. They were attached to what you provide. And that's a hard thing to lose, but an easy thing to tell apart once you actually test it.
Which requires saying no at least once.
Which requires saying no at least once. Yeah.
Can I admit something else, since we're already here? I actually think this shows up differently depending on where you're saying no. No to a friend feels one way, no to your boss feels completely different.
Oh, that's a whole other layer, isn't it? And actually, I want to come back to that a bit later because I think work and family is where this gets genuinely complicated in a way that a simple formula doesn't always cover on its own.
Hold that thought. I want to hear it.
We'll get there. But first, let's slow down for a second. David, we used some interesting words in that last section. Want to slow down and walk through a few before we keep going?
Let's do it.
First one, boundary.
Boundary. When I say boundary, I mean a limit you set on what you will and won't accept or won't do in a relationship or situation.
Example sentence.
I told my manager I don't check email after 6. It's just a boundary I have for myself.
Nice. Second one, resentment.
Resentment. This is that slow-building anger you feel when you keep doing something you don't want to do and it stacks up over time.
By the time she finally said something, years of resentment came out all at once.
Painfully accurate to my own story from earlier.
Third word, to overcommit.
To overcommit. Saying yes to more things than you actually have time or energy for.
I always overcommit in January and then spend February exhausted.
Story of everyone's life, honestly. Okay, my turn. Fourth word. Assertive.
Assertive. Confident and direct in a way that's clear but not aggressive. It's the sweet spot between too soft and too harsh.
She gave an assertive but polite answer. No drama, just clear.
Fifth, guilt trip.
Guilt trip. This one's fun. It's when someone tries to make you feel bad on purpose so you'll do what they want.
Don't guilt trip me into going. I already told you I'm tired.
Ouch, but accurate.
Last one, hard pass.
Hard pass. It's a casual, friendly way of saying a firm no. It sounds light, but it's completely clear.
Sushi for the 5th time this week? Hard pass.
I feel personally attacked by that example.
It's not about you. Okay, 6 words, that's plenty. Let's get back to the good stuff because I still haven't told you what a positive no actually sounds like in real life.
Right, yes, give me the method.
Okay, so remember the 3 A's. Accommodate, attack, avoid. Uri's alternative is built around a really simple structure. He calls it yes, no, yes.
That sounds like a contradiction.
It sounds like one, but it's not. Here's how it works. You start with a yes, which is your own deeper interest, the thing that actually matters to you. Then comes the no, which is your clear, respectful refusal. And then you end with another yes, which is an offer, an alternative, or a door left open in some other way.
Give me a real example, because that's a bit abstract right now.
Okay, let's use your friend Jay and the moving situation, but rewritten. Instead of the explosion, imagine this. I really care about our friendship, and I want to keep being someone you can count on. That's the first yes.
Okay.
But I can't help you move this weekend. I've already committed that time to something else. That's the no. Clear. No apologizing for existing, no long explanation, just the fact.
And then the second yes?
I'd be happy to help you find a moving company or come by afterward and help you unpack. That's the second yes. You're not abandoning the relationship, you're just redirecting where your effort goes.
Huh. That version doesn't sound cold at all.
That's the whole point. It sounds like someone who respects themselves and respects the other person at the same time. Uri has this line I really liked. He says, the first yes is respect for yourself, and the second yes is respect for them. The no in the middle is just the honest fact, sitting between two true things.
Okay, but here's my pushback. What if the other person doesn't accept it? What if they push or get upset anyway?
This is where the method gets even more useful, because Uri talks about something he calls Plan B.
Which is what, exactly?
It's basically your backup plan if the person doesn't respect your no. Like if Jay had kept pushing, come on, it's just a few hours, I really need you. Your plan B might be repeating the same boundary calmly without escalating. Some people call this the broken record technique. You just repeat the same true thing, gently, as many times as needed without adding new explanations or getting defensive.
So instead of getting louder, you just repeat yourself.
Exactly. I hear you, and I still can't this weekend. Same sentence, same calm tone, again if needed. It's surprisingly hard to argue with someone who isn't arguing back.
That's a specific skill. I don't think I've ever done that in my life. I either fold immediately or I blow up.
Most people are one or the other. The middle path takes practice. But here's the thing that made this click for me. Uri says something like, you're not responsible for the other person's reaction to your no. You're responsible for saying it honestly and respectfully. What they do with that is theirs to carry.
That's a genuinely freeing sentence.
It really is, because so much of the fear around no isn't about the no itself. It's about managing the other person's disappointment for them. And you can't actually do that. You were never able to do that.
I want to sit with that one for a second.
Take your time.
Yeah. Okay. I think I've spent a lot of energy trying to control how other people feel about my choices, and that was never actually possible.
It wasn't. It just felt possible, because when you say yes, you skip the uncomfortable part entirely. But skipping it doesn't mean it disappears. It just moves inside you instead.
Back to the resentment thing.
Back to the resentment thing. It always connects.
Okay, so let's connect the dots here, because I think I see where this is going. Earlier, you talked about the fawn response, the body reacting to a no as if it's dangerous. And now we've got this yes, no, yes structure. How do those two things actually work together?
This is exactly the connection I wanted to make. The fawn response explains why saying no feels hard in your body. It's not weakness, it's an old alarm system doing its job a little too well. But the yes, no, yes method gives that alarm system something new to do. Instead of the body going straight to danger, please them, survive, you give it a script, a calm, respectful, structured way to say the true thing.
So it's not about turning off the alarm.
You can't really turn it off, not overnight, but you can give it a different response to reach for. And every time you use it and the world doesn't end and the person doesn't disappear, that alarm gets a little quieter. That's basically how any fear works. You don't argue it away, you give it new evidence.
That's actually kind of hopeful.
I think it is. It means you don't need to become a different person to get better at this. You just need reps, small, low-stakes practice.
Which is a nice segue, because I want to talk about how this shows up outside the big dramatic examples. Because most of our no's aren't about friends moving apartments. They're small
Someone asking to borrow money you don't want to lend. A coworker asking you to take on one more project. Your neighbor asking for a favor at a bad time.
Right. And I actually looked into this a bit for the episode because there's a researcher named Adam Grant who studies exactly this kind of thing. He wrote a book called Give and Take. His research is mostly about workplaces, but the finding is relevant everywhere. The most successful and most respected people aren't the ones who say yes to everything. They're the ones who are generous but selective.
They know which yeses actually matter, and they protect the rest.
So being the person who says yes to everything doesn't even make people respect you more.
According to his research, often the opposite. People who overextend themselves for everyone tend to burn out and become less effective at the things that actually matter, both to them and to others. Selective generosity beats constant generosity almost every time.
That reframes the whole fear, honestly. I always thought saying no made me less valuable to people, but it sounds like it's the opposite. Saying yes to everything makes your yes worth less because it's not actually a choice anymore.
That's a really good way to put it. If you say yes to everything, your yes doesn't mean anything. It's just the default setting. But if people know you actually mean it when you say yes, because you're willing to say no sometimes, your yes becomes worth something.
Okay, I like that a lot. And actually, for a lot of people listening to the show specifically, there's an extra layer here, because English itself works a little differently around this than a lot of other languages.
How do you mean?
Well, in some cultures, a direct no is completely normal, even expected in daily conversation. But in English, especially in the US, the UK, or Australia, a flat no with nothing around it can come across as sharper than it's meant to. There's an expectation of softening, even when the answer itself is completely firm.
So it's not that English speakers say no less, it's that they usually wrap it in something first.
Exactly. Phrases like, I appreciate you thinking of me, but, or that's not going to work for me this time. Those little cushions aren't fake politeness. They're just part of how the language carries a clear message without it landing like a slap.
That's actually a really useful thing for learners to hear, because I think a lot of people translate directly from their own language and end up sounding harsher in English than they meant to.
It happens constantly. Someone who's perfectly polite in their first language says, no, I can't, in English. Completely correct grammar, and it can land as blunt or even rude simply because the cushion is missing. Learning to say no well in English is partly learning the shape of the sentence, not just the vocabulary.
Which loops right back to the whole yes, no, yes idea, doesn't it? It's basically a built-in cushion.
It really is. The first yes softens the entrance, the no carries the actual message, and the second yes softens the exit. It's not just a psychological trick, it's also just how a lot of natural English refusal actually sounds.
I like that this connects back to the language itself and not just the feelings behind it.
Both matter. That's kind of the whole show, honestly. Okay, you brought this up earlier, and I don't want to lose it. Saying no to your boss, that's a different animal entirely.
It really is. Because with a friend, worst case, they're annoyed with you for a week. With a boss, there's a paycheck attached. There's a promotion attached. The stakes feel real because sometimes they actually are real.
This is where I'll push back a little, though. I think a lot of us treat every request at work like it's equally high stakes, when it usually isn't. Someone asking you to take on one more small task isn't the same as someone threatening your job.
Fair, but try telling that to your nervous system at 11 p.m. when you're lying awake because you agreed to a deadline you knew was impossible the second you heard it.
Okay, that's true. So let's actually use the method here because I think this is exactly the kind of situation it was built for. Say your manager asks you to take on a new project and you're already at capacity.
Give me the yes, no, yes version.
First yes. I want to help the team hit this deadline, and I take this project seriously. That's true, and it's not flattery, it's just naming what you actually care about. No, I don't have the bandwidth to add this on top of what I'm already carrying, not without something else moving. Clear, no drama, and notice it's about capacity, not about the person.
And the second yes.
Yes. I can take this on if we shift the deadline on the other project, or if someone else picks up part of it. You're not refusing to help, you're refusing to pretend that time isn't a real, finite thing.
That's smart, because it turns the conversation from will you or won't you into here's what it would actually take.
Exactly. And here's something I read that stuck with me from that same selective generosity we talked about earlier. People who say yes to everything at work often end up doing more low-value work and less of the work that actually matters because their time gets eaten by whoever asks loudest. The people who protect their time tend to end up doing better work, not less work.
I want to believe that, but I also think there's a version of this that doesn't apply evenly. Not everyone has the same safety to push back at work. If you're new, if you're in a precarious job, if there's a real power difference, saying I don't have the bandwidth can land very differently depending on who says it.
That's a completely fair point, and I don't want to pretend the method magically erases power dynamics. It doesn't. But even in those situations, there's usually more room than it feels like in the moment. You don't have to swing all the way from yes to everything to no full stop. Sometimes the positive no at work sounds smaller. I can get to this by Thursday instead of tomorrow. That's still a no. It's just a no to the version of the request that wasn't actually necessary.
A no to the urgency, not a no to the task itself.
Right. Sometimes that's the whole move. You're not rejecting the request, you're rejecting the impossible version of it.
That reframes it a lot, honestly. I always thought of no at work as this binary thing, do it or don't do it. But there's a whole negotiation happening in between.
There always is. That's basically what Yuri spent his whole career studying, actually, negotiation in general. Saying no is just a tiny version of the exact same skill.
Okay, so work has its own rules. What about family? Because I think that might be the hardest one of all, honestly.
It might be the hardest, yeah. And I think it's because family comes with history that a coworker relationship just doesn't have. You're not just saying no to a request. Sometimes you're saying no to a role you've played for 20, 30 years.
The role of the easy one, the helpful one, the one who shows up.
Exactly that. And when you say no in that context, it's not just about this one dinner or this one favor. It can feel like you're breaking a much older agreement. No one ever actually wrote down, but everyone in the family somehow knows.
This is making me think about my grandmother, actually. Every single holiday, without fail, she asks the same question, why can't you stay longer? Even when I've already explained the flight, the work schedule, everything.
What do you usually say?
Historically, I change my flight every single time. I have rebooked flights I genuinely could not afford because saying no to her felt like betraying her.
Did it ever occur to you that maybe that question isn't really a question? Sometimes why can't you stay longer isn't actually asking for information. It's just a way of saying, I miss you, dressed up as a complaint.
I've genuinely never thought about it that way.
Because if that's what it actually is, then the answer isn't to change your flight. The answer is to answer the real feeling underneath it. Something like, I wish I could stay longer too. I miss you the second I leave. That's the yes. Then the no, but I do have to fly back Sunday this time. That's not going to change. And the second yes might be something like, let's plan the next visit before I even leave, so it's not so far away.
That's so much gentler than what I've been doing, which is just quietly resenting the question every single year while also giving into it every single year.
And I think that's the thing about family specifically. The guilt isn't really coming from this one moment. It's coming from years of an old agreement that says love equals sacrifice. Once you can name that agreement, you can actually start to renegotiate it a little at a time.
A little at a time, not all at once.
Not all at once, no. Yuri actually talks about this too, that saying no is a muscle, not a switch. You don't go from a lifetime of accommodating to suddenly setting perfect boundaries with everyone overnight. You start with the smallest, safest no you can find, and you build from there.
Which one for you was the smallest, safest place to start?
Honestly, it was saying no to extra helpings of food at family dinners, which sounds almost funny to say out loud, but it mattered. My mother has always shown love through feeding people and saying, "I'm actually full, thank you." Used to feel like rejecting her love itself.
And now?
Now it's just, "I'm full. I'm full." It doesn't mean anything else anymore. That took years, honestly, but it started somewhere that small.
I like that. It doesn't have to start with the big, scary no. It can start with a second helping of potatoes.
Genuinely, yes. Practice on the small stuff. The big stuff gets easier once the muscle exists. This feels like a good moment to walk through some actual phrases, because knowing the theory is one thing, but a lot of us freeze when it's time to actually open our mouths.
Give me the upgrades.
Okay, a learner might say, "No, I can't," which is true, but it can land a little flat or cold, especially over text.
We understand what you mean, but a more natural way is, "I wish I could, but I'm not able to this time," or "That doesn't work for me right now."
Next one, a learner might say, "I don't want to."
Which is honest, but blunt. A more natural version is, "That's not really something I'm up for at the moment," or simply, "I'll have to sit this one out."
I like "sit this one out." That's such a friendly phrase.
It really is. It sounds light even though it's a full, real no.
Okay, next, a learner might say, "Stop asking me."
Strong. A gentler but still clear version, "I've said a couple of times now and I need you to respect that."
That's the broken record in action right there.
Exactly. Calm, repeated, no new explanation needed. Last one from me. A learner might say, "Fine, I'll do it," when they actually mean no.
Which is the accommodate trap, wearing a smile. A better version, even if it's harder to say, "Let me think about it and get back to you." That buys you time to actually check in with yourself before answering.
That one's underrated. You don't owe anyone an instant answer.
You really don't. "Let me get back to you" is one of the most useful sentences in English, honestly, for exactly this reason.
Should be taught in schools.
Right? Right after no itself.
Can I ask the question everyone listening is probably thinking right now? What happens when you say all of this, calmly, respectfully, yes, no, yes, and everything, and the other person still gets upset anyway?
Honestly, sometimes they will. And I think we should say that plainly instead of pretending this method is some kind of magic spell that guarantees a smooth reaction every time.
Because it isn't.
It isn't. Some people are used to getting a yes from you, and the first no, however kindly it's delivered, is going to surprise them, maybe even upset them for a moment. That's not proof you did it wrong. That's just what change feels like on the other end of it.
So what do you actually do in that moment? Because I think this is where a lot of people panic and take the no back.
Right. This is the moment people cave, because the discomfort of watching someone else be upset feels unbearable. But this is exactly where Yuri's idea about Plan B comes back in. You don't need to fix their reaction. You need to let it exist without absorbing it as your job to manage.
But what does that actually sound like? Give me the words.
Something like, "I can see you're disappointed, and that makes sense. My answer's still the same." You're not denying their feeling. You're not arguing with it. You're just not letting it change the fact.
That's such a small sentence to carry that much weight.
It really is. And there's a version of this for anger, too, not just disappointment. If someone gets sharp with you, snaps, raises their voice a little, the instinct is to match their energy or immediately backtrack. Yuri actually compares this to a kind of martial arts principle, staying grounded instead of getting pulled into their emotional state. You don't fight back and you don't collapse. You just stay standing where you are.
Like a tree in wind instead of a fight.
I like that image better than Ryan, honestly. Steal it.
I will. Okay, but here's my honest concern with all of this. What if the relationship genuinely can't survive a no? What if it turns out that someone only valued you for the yes?
Then I think, painful as it is, that's actually useful information. Not fun information, but useful. Because a relationship that can't survive one honest, respectfully delivered boundary was probably already resting on something a little fragile.
That's a hard thing to hear.
It is, but I'd rather find that out with one calm no than after another 10 years of quiet resentment, wouldn't you?
When you put it that way, yeah.
I want to tell you about a phone call I had, maybe 2 months ago, because it's the first time I really used this method on purpose and noticed it working in real time.
I'm listening.
A former coworker called me asking if I'd do some freelance writing for her. Unpaid. For exposure, she said, which, is its own conversation.
A conversation for another episode.
A very different episode. But in the moment, my old instinct was already there. The tight chest, the urge to just say yes and figure out how to actually do it later. And instead, I paused. I actually said out loud, "Let me think for a second," which felt strange, almost rude, even though it wasn't.
What happened next?
I said, "I really value our friendship, and I'm glad you thought of me." That's the first yes. Then, "I don't take on unpaid writing work anymore. It's just a rule I've set for myself." That's the no. Clean. No apology attached to it. And then, "If you ever have paid work down the line, I'd genuinely love to hear about it." Second yes.
And how did she take it?
Completely fine. Better than fine, actually. She said, "Totally fair. I figured I'd ask." That was it. The whole thing I'd been dreading for probably a decade of my life took maybe 8 seconds to actually say.
8 seconds after years of build-up.
Years. That's the part that gets me the most. The fear is always so much bigger than the actual moment.
It's like the fawn response you mentioned earlier, sounding an alarm for a threat that isn't really there anymore.
Exactly that. My body was reacting to some old version of a risk that just doesn't exist in that friendship. She wasn't going to disappear over a boundary. Most people don't.
Most people don't. That's worth repeating.
I think what I'm taking away from this conversation, more than any specific phrase, is that no isn't actually the opposite of kindness. I used to think being nice meant being available for everything. And I think what I actually believe now is that real kindness includes honesty, even when the honest thing is smaller or less convenient than what someone wanted to hear.
I think for me, it's the thing I said earlier about being scared that saying no would make me less valuable to people. I don't think I've fully worked through that, if I'm honest. But naming it out loud today on a podcast in front of however many people are listening, that felt like a start.
It is a start. And I don't think either of us walks away from this a finished, perfectly boundaried person. I think we walk away with one new sentence we can try the next time it matters. That's genuinely enough.
One sentence at a time.
One sentence at a time. So here's a real question for you, if you're listening. Think of one relationship in your life where you keep saying yes and quietly meaning no. Not the whole list, just one. What would the yes, no, yes version of your next no actually sound like?
You don't have to say it out loud yet. Just have it ready.
Just have it ready. Thank you so much for spending this time with us today. This one got more personal than we planned, and we're glad it did.
If this episode gave you something useful, or even just something to think about on your walk home, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Chances are you already know exactly who that is.
This was the Real English Podcast. I'm Olivia.
And I'm David. Take care, keep going, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.